All right, so to carry on this conversation on World Book and Copyright Day, particularly You Are the Reader. Several guests with us in the studio. They are very intelligent people, which begin to make me feel intelligent by association. The first I am going to call is a multi-award winning novelist and one of Africa's rising voices in literature and humanity. He is no other than ABUBAKAR Adam Ibrahim. He is an author and a novelist, and he's joining us via Zoom. It's good to have you on the show.
Good to be here, everyone. Thank you. Such a long time.
Yes, indeed it has been. The next time I see you, you owe me an autograph. I'll buy 5 of your books and have all of them autographed.
Autograph and pepper soup.
All right. Yeah, that's nice. I'll remember that. All right. The next person we're going to be talking with in the studio, he is a professor, a political scientist, a writer, a literature enthusiast. I like to think of him as someone who pushes the boundary of human development in both literature and critical thinking. They say, he says, that you should doubt everything so you can properly analyze everything before you can know anything. Ladies and gentlemen, with me in the studio is political scientist and writer, Professor EMEKA ANIAGOLU. It's good to have you on the show.
Thank you very much.
Well done. Also, finally, I have another person with me. He is also a writer, a poet, a playwright, a cultural expert, and the immediate past president of the Association of Nigerian Writers, Nigerian Authors. He's with us here in the studio. I've been on the stage with him, seen him read his unique form of poetry, his diverse knowledge of culture. He's truly a delight and intelligent person to have with us in the studio. Please welcome to the studio with me, DENJA ABDULLAHI, author, poet, playwright, and cultural expert.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Good to be here to see you again.
All right, so I get the first question I'm going to start, and I'm going to start with you, Professor, is why do we have a day to remember and celebrate books? What's behind this whole World Book Day brouhaha?
Well, I mean, I think the whole point of UNESCO doing this is to remind countries of the importance of reading and continuing the process, because every generation, the umbilical cord that connects one generation to the next is education, and you can't actually achieve that without reading.
Okay.
And so that's very important. And I've heard a lot of talk about the business of a reading culture,
Okay.
but it's become almost like a kind of a cliche, because I think you have to anchor this demand for or exhortation about reading culture to actual concrete institutions,
Okay.
particularly in the so-called developing world. We don't have enough libraries, if any. So if a child is actually interested in reading, where do they go to? I don't know that there's a metropolitan library system in this country, in Nigeria. And so there are not many places where you can say there's a national library here in Abuja, which I must confess is not what it should be.
Yeah.
But if you go to the different states and cities and municipalities and local governments, there are no libraries. So most of the young people that may otherwise be interested in reading don't actually have anywhere to go to cultivate the so-called culture of reading in the first place. So I think there must be institutions in which that exhortation is anchored.
All right, Mr. DENJA ABDULLAHI, I'm going to ask you next. What really can be achieved with the whole idea of, celebrating a World Book Day? Is it just another good press opportunity for UNESCO and the UN? Or we celebrated World Book Day, we sent some money and press and PR, and that's that. What really can be achieved with celebrating a day?
Well, I think devoting a day to the book is very important to continuously remind our people of the importance of the book in our society. World Book and Copyright Day is celebrated every year with various themes. I think the themes that are selected every year are supposed to redirect us to some very unique and forgotten aspect of the book. For example, the one that is flashed this year, reading will not make you feel low, or something like that.
Yeah.
Is going to, I think, it's trying to look at to address the mental aspect of reading. You can use reading, you can use book to propagate and to fight mental imbalance. You when you read, sometimes you can use it to inspire yourself. You can use it to get out of bad mood. You escape into the fantasy world. So that celebrating the day, they look for different themes.
Okay.
And they direct us to some forgotten benefits of reading. That is what I can say about it. If people pick their bearing from those themes, they can now look at area. There are things books can do that we can easily just take for granted. But when we celebrate it each year, we can pick on some things that will make us to look at it, a book from some very fresh perspective. It can be, for example, when people say people don't read it, like the Prof said, it has become a cliche. People are not reading. I don't want to even to listen to that kind of thing because I know a lot of reading is going on.
Okay.
So we should not be saying that again about our people. People are reading, but what kind of things are they reading? So when we theme the World Book Day every year, I think people who go into developing teams will try to pick up a freshness to it. I think that is just the benefit I can see with celebrating World Book Day every year, redirecting our mind to some forgotten benefits of reading or of the book.
All right, thank you very much. So Abubakar Ibrahim, I'm going to ask you this question. Mr. DENJA Abdullahi said something very significant. He said there are things that books can do that we take for granted, too much. So first of all, what are those things that books can do for us that we take for granted that are actually quite important to human development?
Before I respond to that, I think I'd like to respond to the this proposition that, why is it significant to have a World Book Day?
All right, fine.
And I think it's very important to have one because every other day or every other time we need something to remind us of the significance of books, right?
Okay.
And to pay attention to this sector and to make sure that books are available to people and people have access to books and to have a conversation around books. That is very important. That is why this day is important, right? My problem though is that there is often no follow through. Right. So we celebrate the day, we hold press conferences, we invite celebrities to talk about books, but what happens afterwards? Right? We go away and wait for the next book day to come, and then we have to do all this talk and presentations and say things about book. And I think that's the problem. Right? I remember a few years ago, this was around maybe 2013 or 2012, I don't remember. I know Jonathan was the president at that time. There was this big event in Abuja to encourage the reading culture, right? And celebrities, film stars were brought in to do readings and all of that. And then nothing happens afterwards, right? So if you organize an event, get people to come, and then you do readings and tell them, oh, reading is fun, and they don't have access to material to read, they don't have access to libraries, then we're not doing the right thing. We're just putting on a show, right? Which is rather unfortunate. So follow through is very important, really, really important. Now to address your question about what significance reading has. I'll talk about my personal experience because for me, I felt like before I traveled anywhere, right, I'd gone to all these places through books. I've gone to Mars, I've gone to the moon, I've gone on ship cruises, and I've never stepped on a ship at that point in time. I've been on airplanes, I've jumped off, I've been on deserts, I've gone to all these fantastical places through books that I've read. So when I eventually had the opportunity to go to these places, they went all together too strange because I've encountered them before. And that is the significance of reading, that people have, I've mentioned this before because I think it's important. Maybe 100 years plus before, Jules Verne wrote a book about a bullet to the moon, right? And the book is essentially about some people in the US shooting a giant bullet with a person in it that goes to the moon. And eventually, 100 years later, that thing happened. The rocket was shot to the moon with people in it. That is the power of imagination. If you can imagine something, you set a target for people and they can strive to achieve it. And this is what books does to people, giving them the opportunity to imagine the possibilities that are out there and then to work towards achieving those possibilities.
Wow, thank you very much. That was very insightful. Professor, I'm going to ask you next. He spoke about no follow-throughs. We have these grand events, and yes, there are no follow-throughs. Should we be looking at having a national policy on reading and books where we have measurable, verifiable objectives that can be reached to move things along? Or what should we actually be doing to ensure that we just don't waste good money? I'm the press. I love the money for publicity, but we just don't spend the money for publicity and not achieve human development at the end of the day.
I think it's essential to put education at the center of the development agenda. All the quote-unquote newly industrializing countries, Singapore and so on and so forth, that successfully achieved that transformation did so by putting enormous emphasis on education. You can't have educational institutions, primary school, secondary school, tertiary institutions without reading.
Yeah.
It's an integral part of it.
It is.
And if it is made a significant part of the development agenda, you will achieve that objective willy-nilly.
So if I would ask, I'm going to take it further, Mr. DENJA ABDULLAHI.
Yeah.
Our education is a lot more about passing exams, you know, and moving on to the next class than it is about grasping understanding. Is there anything we can do at that fundamental level through, like he mentioned, through our educational systems, the primary school, the secondary school, universities, that can affect what we're doing better?
Well, really, the love of books, the love of reading first has to be instituted in our educational curricula, because that is where you can do some measurement.
Yeah.
That is where you can do some indoctrination.
Yeah.
That is where you can redirect people's mind to worthy goals, particularly students. In other senior countries of the world, the educational system is used to achieve their national objective. And you can control, you can measure, you can institute. There you can infuse all these things, strategies that will make people to read the books into it. And that is why you have a book policy. Now, Nigeria has a book policy that is not really being implemented, or that has not been fully established. It's there. And if you look at that policy, I've seen that policy, I've worked on that policy.
Oh, wow.
And I know there are beautiful things capturing all these segments. And I know also that before they bring back the book campaign that Adam ABUBAKAR was referring to came on board, the Federal Ministry of Education had what we call National Initiative on Read campaign, where extensive research was done, which I was part of, to mine the field, bringing all sorts of stakeholders to design a policy. It was well designed and captured everywhere. Part of it is that related to your question you're talking about here, is to train teachers on training them on how to train children to read, and also what should go into the school libraries, what should go into the curriculum to make children love books. Those things are all packaged. But the issue is just that when we don't follow through, as you say, because if you have a system that you are not monitoring, there's no monitoring procedure of what the schools are doing, there's no supervision. If the actual thing that should be done are being done in schools, if you place a system on ground and nobody is supervising if that system is working, nothing will happen. And that is the bane of education in Nigeria. And that is the bane of reading culture we're talking about. The policy is not there.
All right. ABUBAKAR Ibrahim, I'm going to ask you this question. They say the reading culture is in decline, but we find young people reading all kinds of things both on and offline. Is the issue more about the adaptation of reading materials through technology, or is it really that there is a significant decline in our reading culture?
It's a cultural thing. You know, when you bring up children who go to school to write exams, to pass, right, without necessarily reading to understand, isn't that cultural?
Yes, it is. Okay.
The book, you are debasing that culture of reading. When you make the library in the school a scary place, where you tell children, oh, you know, you can't come in here, you can't access this place, or until maybe it's a week to exam, then you say, oh, you know, you can go to the library. And then they go to the library, you keep, you know, hushing them, you keep telling them to keep quiet. You don't encourage people to read by scaring them, by making reading look like a punishment. Right? And that is what we keep doing. If a child is misbehaving, you tell them, go to your room and read. you know, it's so the child connotes or relates reading with punishment, and that is the wrong approach. So we need to change the culture, right? Change the culture, make reading more fun. And when you do that, you need to make sure that people have access to books. Right? If my kids, for instance, if on their birthdays, whatever present I'm giving to them, there has to be a book included. That is standard, right? And they look forward to this because they love reading, right? So I think people need to, like, apart from the government, I think people, individuals, parents need to make an effort themselves, right? I mean, it's fine and convenient to keep blaming the government, and we should blame the government because they haven't done enough. But we should also take responsibility and making sure books are available to people, right? To children, to schools, to whoever we can make give access to books. And then secondly, this is on the eve of the election, more or less. We're having elections next year, and I think, and I'm glad Madam DENJA is here, and I hope the Anna President Camilla Surprise is listening. I think there's something Anna can do about this, right? Presidential candidates are going to come up, they're going to run for offices, they're going to make all sorts of campaign promises. Anna, as a pressure group, could make demands. What policies do you have on books? What policies do you have on libraries? Right? The library, National Library staff has been on strike for, I think, since December. No one is talking about it. Wow. No one is having any conversation about it. No, how many people even know that the National Library is on strike?
All right, so because of time, I'm going to have to interject because I'm just been told we just have about three minutes or so for the show. So I'm going to ask you, Mr. DENJA, you just have about 1 minute to answer. Let's talk copyright very quickly. We're talking about World Copyright Book and Copyright Day. Why do we need copyright? Shouldn't we be spreading knowledge as fast and wide as we should? Why should we copyright books?
Copyright is very important in order to inspire those who write books. Because a lot of people write books in Nigeria and they are not getting the benefit of their labor in that industry. So copyright will improve the profitability of being a writer, being a musician, being a content creator, because that is the area where a lot of wealth is in now for the people in the creative sector. Copyright protection, intellectual, respect intellectual property, getting residual income. I've enjoyed some of these things. I'll sit there in my house and I get something from what I've done 20 years back. So that is what copyright is for, is to protect the creators of books.
Okay. Yeah. Professor, I'm going to ask you the next question. Reading and the economy. Is there any connection? And if there is, what it is?
Of course there's a connection. I mean, we live in a supremely literate age. Just about everything you want to do in terms of development has to do with the ability to read and write, and of course numeracy. So that if you don't have a culture that is reading, a system, national system that allows for people to develop the reading habit and cultivate it to the highest level possible, you're going to lag behind as a national society. And I think our experience is bearing it out.
Thank you very much. Finally, I'm just going to ask you very quickly in about 30 seconds, Abubakar. UNESCO says books are a symbol of hope and dialogue. Is this true? And if it is, why? In 30 seconds.
In 30 seconds, books are, UNESCO says they are, because it's through reading that you understand the culture of the next person. And if you understand the culture and identity of the next person, you will understand your own culture and your own identity, and you see points of integration and peaceful coexistence.
Exactly.
Now, this is why you are a writer. Well, we've been talking about World Book and Copyright Day, and my guests have been Abubakar Adam Ibrahim, author and novelist. He joined us via Zoom. Thank you very much for your participation. I've also had with me in the studio DENJA ABDULLAHI, who is also an author, poet, playwright, and a cultural expert. It's good to have you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
And of course, we have the professor himself, EMEKA ANIAGOLU. He's a political scientist, a writer, and a lover of human development. Thank you, sir, for having me on the show.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.